Hello, welcome to the Meeting Tent, an ongoing series on the work of Stan Tenen. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our usual cast of characters: Levana Tenen, Edel Packer, Daniel Gill, and Michael Andron. So today we're going to continue our series of analyzing Stan's graphics work, the posters that he created over the years. The one we're going to be looking at today was actually created after the book was written, and is not readily available. And by the way, I strongly advise, if you're watching this, to get a copy of this article. You can get it by emailing meruwest@gmail.com. And all you have to do is put in the subject matter Glassblower. I'll have that on the screen. And we're going to be going through this poster today, but we're going to be going through the actual article in our next episode. So you want to get a copy of both the poster we're doing today and the article, and I'll email that to you if you contact me. So let me put up the poster that we're going to be looking at today. This is called the Glassblower. And this is an example of taking some ancient world technology, or even physics, you could call it, and applying it to the ideas that Stan has been presenting, and we've been presenting over the last episodes. This idea of a glass blower, it's a technology that began in the 1st century BCE in Syria, and it spread throughout the Roman Empire, and is still around today. If you YouTube it, you'll see people that are still doing this. It's a wonderful art, and the creations that people do are incredible. But Stan saw this as a way of demonstrating a way of looking through the dimensions, and how you could be looking at the same model through the 4 dimensions. Now, this poster was created, and it was based on an article. And I want to put up the article. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling back to the top. This is in the ETorus newsletter that the Tenens created over the years. And this was one of the last newsletters, was created in 2014, May of 2014. And the first part of it just talks about Meru Foundation's outlook, or future outlook, which I'm not sure where that went. Here he talks about what's in a name: the glassblower, the golden rule, the Sephirotic tree of life. We'll be talking about that more in our next episode. And then he discusses the Inyan, which we've talked about before. And we're going to go through that again. It's really an important aspect of his work, and we'll be talking about that later on. Here again is the poster that discusses Inyan, and like I said, we'll be going through that again. And then here we go through the different dimensions. And there is one thing that Levana wanted me to read, because it's important to what we're discussing today. And it's about the 4 dimensions. And here's a brief description. In 1D, what goes around comes around. It's a line segment, back and forth, tit for tat, reciprocity, or in Newton, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. In 2D, what goes around comes around is a circle, the wheel of karma, the potter's kick wheel from the Zohar. In 3D, what goes around comes around is the sphere of possibilities, emanating from a single starting point at its center. And in 4D, what goes around comes around is the hypersphere, defined by 6 model hands. Then he talks about Ruach, which is from the Sephirotic tree. We'll be talking about that again, but I do want to read the glass blower analogy because that's what we're talking about today. This relationship between man's soul and God's breath can be illustrated with an analogy. Imagine a glass blower who decides to make a beautiful vessel. This decision emanates from the innermost will. Next, we see the glass blower himself before he begins to blow out. This is the level where the life force is still within the realm of the divine. Next, the breath emanates from the mouth of the glassblower and flows as a pressurized wind, Ruach, through the glass-blowing pipe, expanding in all directions and forming a crude vessel. The wind finally comes to rest in the completed vessel. And we are interpreting expanding in all directions as indicating the dimensional progression from 1 to 4 dimensions. Now, in this article, the actual poster is a little bit different. So let's go back to the original poster.
I'd like to insert just
Yes.
just a little specific credit. Most of what Bill just read in terms of the glassblower analogy, starting with the idea of Ruach and God's breath, that is actually all taken from the writing of Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. And this one is from his book Inner Space. That is why you get some very traditional terminology, and the basic idea being that in terms of God's creating the universe, he did it with his breath. And so, what does that mean? So, that's like the starting point. That last line, however, about we're interpreting expanding in all directions as indicating the dimensional progression from 1 to 4 dimensions, that's pure Stanley. So Kaplan didn't write that. That was what Stanley got from what Kaplan wrote.
So Lavana, let's talk about this. And is there a preamble to this of something that led to his coming up with this idea of the glass blower?
It was one of the in terms of dealing with its being a glass blower. I suspect that it was when he always reviewed books that he had already read before, 3, 4, and 5 times. And so at one point he happened to pick up Inner Space, and it just clicked. The idea of glassblower, Ruach. Oh. And it, as many things often did with him, every thread came together at once. Starting with the geometry, which you can see on that left-hand column.
Let me put it back up here.
Yeah, there's one important point about it, which always he thought was truly wonderful and explained and went with a lot. And this, think about our metaphor of the inverted T, the between, all of everything and the single one. A bit of geometry, which was immensely a part of his thinking. In each dimension, the vertical line, which he considered as descending from the transcendent, because he had the inverted T in mind, in each dimension, the vertical line descending from the transcendent is always single. Above is always the one. And you can see that here we've got in the first 1D, we've got that single line as bisecting the horizontal line. In 2 dimensions, we've got the single line arising from the center of the circle. In 3 dimensions, you have the single line arising from what is the center point of the sphere. Imagine the cuboctahedron as being embedded in a sphere, which basically touches it at all of its outside points. And then by analogy. Now, he could visualize in 4 dimensions. I can't, most people can't, but nonetheless, in 4 dimensions, this toroidal figure that you see here is a model of one slice of a 4 dimensional sphere, the 24 cell, a hypersphere. And in that, um, that is the origin or one of the origins of the hand model. Um, Still with a single center and going down to the radius of everything. I admit, I can't visualize in 4 dimensions either, but people who can have said, yeah, as this is as accurate a way of picturing a 3 dimensional slice of this 4 dimensional figure, as anything else. So I, I,
This,
I take it on the authority of people who can actually see this stuff.
this is one of the few posters that shows the hand model and the inverted T on one page.
Mhm. And judging in terms of seeing how important he felt this dimensional progression was, if you take a look through a whole lot of our posters, he uses and reuses this particular progression many, many times. The one on the left hand side. He doesn't always go towards the right hand side, which we'll get to, I guess, which relates it more to traditional material and what we commonly refer to as the tree of life in Kabbalistic literature. Um, but many of these posters use the dimensional progression of 1D, 2D, 3D, and 24 cell hypersphere. So for him, this is a very important key to how he brought a lot of his ideas together.
Right, just a little pause here. Can you guys see all of you or just a person speaking?
I see all. If you've got just a person speaking, you should change to gallery view because you're not going to get.
Yeah, how do I,
Go up to view and select gallery.
it's not there as an option. Okay. All right, I'm not going to worry about it. If you guys can see all of you, then for some reason on my iPad, oh, maybe that's why it's on the iPad. Okay, back to it. So what is this idea of Ruach? Maybe somebody can chime in on that aspect of the Sephirotic tree. He's using it as breath. Does anybody have insight into that term or that concept? Yeah, it's Michael.
Um, the the four levels of the soul are really five, but five is so close to the oneness that it's often sort of ignored. The fourth one, Atzilut, is that world. The name of that world is um, means Eitzel, means near. In other words, you're getting really, really close. But each of the four worlds we operate on all those worlds. So our physical world, um, if you wanted to play with words, you could say that's the anatomic, and then that's the nefesh, and then ruach, which is the second world, the psycho-emotional world of Yetzirah, is the take away the an at the beginning of anatomic, and that's the atomic. Okay, we're moving into a place where everything is energy. Ruach, as a general term, is not only the name of the soul at the second level, but would be closer to the equivalent of what is in many other traditions, the chi or ki or ruach, prana. All of the words that define energy are words of breath there, and ruach is the breath itself. And the breathing in is the nefesh, the breathing out, the breathing in is the neshama. We're breathing energy down. Lin shom is to breathe in. Lin afesh is to breathe out. So the names of the soul correspond to the four world theory. If you want to think of that as different frequencies of a radio, if you have a radio that only gets the lowest level, that's maybe your AM radio. But you can then go up faster. It's a faster vibration. A dimension is a faster velocity. You'd be at Ruach. The soul would be moving that much faster. Like this note C on a piano in the next octave is going to be one up from that. It's going to be low C, middle C, high C, and so on. So as a general term, it refers to one of the levels of our soul.
And breathing out is what he's doing. That's what the
yes,
what
right.
he's doing. Now it said he's mapped Ruach on the hand model, and as you can see, and I'll be able to zoom in on this when the videos when I edit. He's got the Ruach broken down to the three letters, the Resh, the Vav, and the Chet. The Resh being the head, and the thumb is at the head, the Resh, and the Vav is the connection, the spin axis, and then the Het is the fingertips are a fence field around the earth plane. And you can see the earth plane being the base of the model. Any other comments on that? Yes, Adele.
Yeah, Ruach, in terms of movement, is like wind. It's like an exhale that blows you into action, into movement. That's kind of how I see that level of the soul and that level of the breath. And I actually used that in my recent choreography, where I asked the dancer, who happened to be in a wheelchair, to kind of look at that intent and what motions or gestures come up with this sense of ruach, this wind. And she said, oh yes, when I see the wind blowing the trees, I want to move like the wind. And it was just such a beautiful and rather innocent response to this concept. And so we included it in the dialogue. And then, yeah, I just try to embody these different aspects of the breath. And when it comes to Ruach, it's just filled with action, like you want to move. And so I don't know how that relates to what Michael was saying, but I know in the Kabbalistic way of looking, Ruach would be more of action world. I wonder if that corresponds with Michael's statement, but thank you.
Well, it is creation. It is just depicted as creation in many medieval and Renaissance paintings of God creating the universe or the earth. Daniel.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. So Ruach is the like substance of breath, but neshama is like neshima, which means to breathe. Like a breath is a neshima, right? Kol ha-neshama tahalel Yah. My whole soul, or every soul, praises Yah, God. I think it's Rabbi Nachman says every single breath, kol neshima v'neshima, every single breath, you should thank God and praise God for every breath you have, so to speak. But what's interesting about this from like an energetic perspective, I think, in terms of music, is there's like, Ruach Elokim Ruachev al pnei hamayim. God's breath is hovering on the face of the water, meaning you pick up a piece of music or anything you do, but music's an obvious example, right? But it's there for everything. On the face of your life, there's Ruach, there's energy, right? And so for me, you put down a piece of music. It doesn't matter the type of music, jazz, rock, whatever, classical. You get a group of people together and they put the music down. So there's Ruach there, right? But the neshama is when all of a sudden you feel the breath, you know? So there's a certain thing that happens when you're playing with other people. It either happens or it doesn't, you know? And when you're connected with the people and everyone's loving the music and doing this dance of emotions together, right? With different parts, which is not that dissimilar, I think, from what Stan was talking about in terms of the minyan doing the motions together, right? Each person has a different perspective on those motions and emotions, but together, that the unified experience of different individuals coordinated, you know, you're playing along and whatever you're playing, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, and the whole room kind of like explodes, you know. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before. I've had that happen a lot playing with my rock band, and I had it happen once with a piano trio. We were reading through Mendelssohn's piano trio, and that was the most energy I've ever felt in a piece of music. It was like I was almost like fried. I mean, I had a migraine afterwards. Like it was so much energy that came through with that piece of music. So that's neshama, right? It's the ruach, and you know, the ruach is felt. It's the breath as opposed to just the matter of the breath, or the awareness of the breath. And then chaya and yechida already, you know, as Michael mentioned, like it's already starting. Chaya is like chiyut, lashon chiyut. It's somehow even deeper than that, which is hard to imagine. And then yechida is like oneness or uniqueness or something. That's already, I don't know, almost seems like as unknowable as to know God or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, that kind of fits into what the paragraph at the bottom of the poster. This is also describing the act of creation. The analogy would be the formation of a glass vessel. First, the breath, ruach, emanates from the mouth of the glass blower. The vessel is shaped through the interaction of the breath, where the wind bouncing off the walls causes pressure. There you go, Daniel. The vessel then expands in all spatial directions.
Oh, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's wow, that's so cool. Yeah.
That's
Again, that's Kaplan.
from Sefer Yetzirah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Gee.
I mean, it's really Torah coming alive here, you know, in reality and movement. You know, and then going through this poster, you know, and he does show the Sephirotic tree, the different elements of it, and then, you know, gives you a little tutorial on dimensionality here. And again, it's a tough concept, like Levana says, you know, we live in a three-dimensional world. We don't even know, you know, I mean, I believe 4-dimension is having to do with time, but here it's a hypersphere. It's looking from out in from a place that we can't see, but we can feel. And, you know, and it's described by 6 hands. So again, what we're looking at is Stan's attempt to try to explain this idea of, you know, when we look at these models and we look at these ideas, they're not static. There's movement here, that it's alive, that it's real. It's part of our consciousness, and it's part of our 3-dimensional physical world. And that's the one thing that he had a hard time explaining to people, or at least it was hard for us to grasp, because it's not the way we think. It's that's the way he thinks. And I think, you know, personally, you know, I hope that in some way the world is starting to get it, you know, to expand the fact that there's more than a 3-dimensional universe, that it goes beyond that. And Stan is providing us with the models to understand that, to get that. You know, I mean, you know, Michael and I are old fuddy-duddies, you know. I exclude him because we both have gray hair. in any case, our generation is, we're like past that. But I think that as we grow as a species, as humans, there's a potential to try to get these ideas out there, and to expand our minds. Michael, what do you think about all this? I mean,
as you're talking, my eyes shifted over to the spherotic tree on the right side of the page. When I mentioned before the four world paradigm, there are four of these, one on top of the other. In other words, you see the bottom one is Malchut and the top one is Keter, crown, and the bottom Malchut is like kingship, kingdom. That's the physical world, and Keter is the crown. But the one that's next up, the Malchut of the next world, is where the Keter is here. In other words, it's like stacked. It's like not one ladder, but we stack it in and we stack it in and we stack it in like we're building with Legos. And something that Adele said before when talking about Ruach, colloquially, if you're at a summer camp and the musician is up front trying to get everybody really hyped up and energized, they'll say, oh, there's a lot of Ruach. Come on, we need some Ruach in here. It's all a journey from the physical, the very lowest Malchut on the lowest world, which is the world called Asiyah, which simply means doing. It's an action. But if we can silence the doing, which is what most people spend most of their time doing, that's the 3D world we live in. And yeah, there's the 4D, but that's the world of our senses. And we have to quiet that to be able to move up one. We just passed the holiday of Shavuot, and the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, were slaves. They had a slave mentality to the physical world, to the world of ego and fear. Chametz, the leavening that caused our armor to go up. 7 weeks later, they stood at Sinai, and the expression ro'im et hakolot, they saw the sounds. My sister wrote a children's book called Hear the Colors, See the Music. And if you added to that the dimension of movement, of dance, of Tai Chi, when it's really being done, not just as a slow motion movement, but as a movement that has energy, we realize that we're all of these dimensions simultaneously. We just can't sense it. And looking at these, just going down the line on the left side, on the center line, and the little short one there, over here. I don't know if my
yeah,
thing
I'll blow
shows
it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, don't lock yourself into one of these. You're in all of them. And in the field of education and in the field of philosophy, in the field of so many things, as many people as there are who are locked into that physical paradigm, there are those who are trying to escape, not escape, to expand and encompass all of them, because we are, whether we know it or we don't know it, we are all of them. And the action, even though the first one is Asiyah, is doing, it really deals with the electromagnetic stuff, the physical, anatomical stuff. When we move into the world of atoms and then subatomic, from anatomic to atomic to subatomic, when we get higher and higher and higher, deeper and deeper and deeper, and clearly Stan, when he would look at something, was not looking at it simply with his geometric engineering eyes. his whole journey, when you read the book from cover to cover, the journey, which repeats over and over like a spiral, is journeying. It's a journey from the very slowest to the very fastest frequencies, from the speed of sound to the speed of light to the speed of light squared. You know, it's a journey into all of those, and it's a journey in consciousness. But it's hard to grasp. We grasp it, the second world, when they say you learn Torah on each of these 4 levels, the second world, the world of the psycho-emotional world, is called remez. It's a hint. We get a little peek of something, P-E-E-K. We get a peek and then we lose it. Rav Kook said, you know, divine light comes like lightning, but you can't read by lightning, because by the time you pick up the book, the lightning's gone. He said the perpetual lightning, where light comes, there's enough lightning going on that you can read by it. That's the Torah. That was the way he viewed it. It was trying to get to a place where we felt, saw, intuited, understood any word going through all of these levels, the light that was there. It's all about light. It's all about light. And it's just, at what level do we perceive light? We can perceive it through dance, not just movement. We can also just shovel dirt, but we're not doing it necessarily at a high level. So we're just going through motions, but motions are not movement. Just like when I speak, the vibration of my word is not necessarily music. The music of the spheres, the music that the body creates in dance, and in physics. I mean, the guys who were the like supreme physicists saw God in their equations. They couldn't grasp it necessarily because they were using a language of physicality. So it's all wonderment. when you ask, what am I? That's what I'm thinking. It's all wonderment, and we have to just reach. And that's something that, as Lavana said earlier, that Stan was always doing. There was always that curiosity. There was always, if I can get just a little faster, if I can get a little higher, and without drugs, if I can just get higher, I can perceive it. I saw a flash of lightning and then it went away.
You know, since, you know, Michael got into the part of this poster that deals with the tree, this is something that comes up in, well, every Kabbalistic book that has ever been written deals with this subject. And yet, again, we're looking at it two-dimensionally. And Dan or Adele, what is your take on the tree? Have you ever been able to expand your mind in terms of looking at this kind of like Michael has described, but, you know, beyond the 2 dimensions? In other words, and I don't think there are very many authors who are able to do this, to really, they explain it, they go through the definitions, it's very, you know, mental, but the experience of the tree, have either of you been able to get beyond that? Either of you. Go ahead.
I don't know. It's a great question. Yeah, I think it's you know, the notion of it really seems to be of like you know, this concept of the inverted T model, you know, where you have this line of energy that falls into something. And so like that process is not only like the entire process, but it's all the little processes also. So, you know, when a person, you know, again, it's has to do with, again, like, you know, the three hands on top and the three hands on bottom over time is kind of like this world and the other world, you know, or the world of energy or souls and the world of action. So there's an upper sense of these things, which has to do with kind of the reality, the nature of reality everywhere. And then there's the specifics of it, which have to do with, for example, I did an act of kindness for someone. I helped someone. So you're taking the energy that we take for granted, but that's always there, and it's being received by an act of kindness, of chesed, of giving, right? And then sometimes, let's say it's Shabbat, and I withhold from doing a lot of things in the world. So I'm taking the energy and I'm not doing with it, right? So that would be gvura, which means to not to, strength to withhold from, right? So and then Tiferet is in the middle, and that has to do with kind of both of these processes that ends in acting compassionately, right? I mean, compassion isn't I'm giving something. Compassion is, wow, this person really needs some help. They've kind of, you know, they kind of messed up their lives. That could be you also. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily anyone else. Like, wow, I really need help. I have compassion on myself, or I have compassion on this person. I mean, I understand their circumstances are somewhat self-induced, but I have compassion with them and I help them, right? So it's oftentimes beauty is thought of as compassion, as mercy is a more of a crude translation. But so Tiferet, or the middle line, is considered kind of the basis of the Jewish outlook. It's not that we discount the negative; we recognize it, but we tend to have compassion and overlook it in other people and in ourselves. So those are just ways in which, I guess, you know, the psychosocial or kind of the psycho-emotional realm in which these things operate, but they also operate in terms of the structure of the universe and kind of a mirror process in a much larger way than just a single life or lifetime.
Adele, do you have any ideas on this? Unmute. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an interesting question. When you first asked it, I was thinking just about three-dimensionality, you know, this flat diagram, and I was already going between the middle column and the right column, and I was just finding it stunning that his inverted T is right there in the Sephirot, that the triangles are right there with already a sense of Tiferet coming out. And then it really pulls out into the tetrahedron. It's just amazing. Like, that just kind of, I was just sitting here before you even asked the question and relating those two ideas. But for me, the gesturing is the three dimensions. I mean, if you take any one of the words like Gevora and you sound it and you see the choreography in your mouth, which I've been learning more about that through this amazing Victoria Hanna and the work she's been doing with sounding the Aleph Bet, and then seeing that the choreography in the mouth really works with the choreography of the hands, and that there's three dimensions. Like, if you go down this, I guess you haven't moved down to where that arrow is pointing yet, but again, to just bring the hand and the breath together by looking at these letters that spell Ruach, it's again, it's only a mind like Stan's that just really keeps playing to see that there's relationship here. But I think that with the dance that I did when I had the opportunity to have 10 dancers, and there's 10 Sephirot, is we really played with the floor pattern of literally, we put spots on the floor because it was such a huge floor, to make sure we could see where we were going to stand, and that each dancer was standing in a spot of the Sephirot as we were going into this more meditative dance. And then we would walk and land ourselves in another spot. So maybe if you started with Keter, as you walked, you'd end up at Netzach. But it was all about, like, they're all in one, it's not a division of 10 things. All of them are in Keter, and all of the 10 aspects are in Chokhmah, and all of the 10 aspects are in each one. We could name them, and there's so many stories of even people who embodied, the students who embodied these different qualities, and yet there was a part of all of them in each of them. So, and the reflection that Daniel mentioned of how we can embody these, but this also a reflection of the Sephirot in the world above. So how we manifest these Sephirot reflects above, and how they are above reflects in our lives and how we move through life. So I think having them in the body, like sort of seeing right arm, left arm, heart, it's a way to remember them. It's like they drop into our body, and we can kind of say, oh yeah, now I know which way the chant goes, and which vowel sounds, and which colors. And I can play with all of these aspects because I can see them on my body. I can remember where they're going. So it's quite a brilliant heritage we've got that has so much. There's so much that you have to see. It's three-dimensional because you can't even hold on to all of the aspects. It's so rich.
What you just described was as above, so below,
Right.
which we've been talking about. So it's going to take some doing to see the relationship between the Sephirot and the hand model. It's a leap. And here are 5 of us trying to get into one brain to try to dissect it. So we're going to continue this next time when we go through this article, and we're going to delve a little bit more deeply into this. It's going to give us more information, and it's going to also summarize a lot of what we've been talking about in the last few episodes. So I strongly urge you, if you're still watching this, to send away for this article so you can be prepared next time. And we'll be going through it, and we'll see what we can dissect, basically. So thanks for watching. Again, appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.